Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. My name is Elise. I'm joined with the lovely Jeanette and Lisa. We are some of the mediums and channelers from Avalon Spirit. And we meet every Friday to talk spirit, drink coffee, and chat about the energies and what's going on. And so this week, we're in a really intense period of time. I mean, I feel like 2024 has been a ride. The last 4 years have been a ride. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the experience of when you can anticipate or feel into a big change coming. So maybe that's your own experience or shift or change, but also could be collectively. And we were thinking, and we always discuss what we're going to talk about. And when this idea came up, Spirit was talking about the experience that we have leading into spiritual initiation, really. And I was a little hesitant even to use that word because sometimes it can mean a lot of different things to different people. And so that's the word that they're really encouraging us to use. So maybe it'll come out through the conversation why. But really, that experience of I can feel something big is coming. And that might be in my own personal experience, it might be collectively, it might be in my life. And how our minds, our spirits, how we play into the lead up to those experiences. And we've had conversations before about the integration after the fact, which is so important. But there's also a lot of importance, and I think a lot that can happen in the days, weeks, months, even sometimes leading up to a big spiritual shift, initiation, learning, change, whatever that may be. So starting there and go.
Mm-hmm. Lisa,
How
do
are
you
you
want to
feeling,
start?
Elise? Do you feel like how are you like relating
Yeah.
to this right now?
Yeah. Well, and part of the reason when I was pondering some, we always come with ideas, and I was thinking, the three of us, whether it's on a trip together, whether it's, individually in our own lives, we seem to really kind of circle around each other in those initiations that happen, right? There's always a cluster experience with us where like maybe it'll be Jeanette, then Lisa, then me, or me, then Lisa, then Jeanette, or Lisa, and we go through these lead ups where all of a sudden we're all like, oh, there's a theme happening here, and we can kind of integrate. And so I think a lot of people are experiencing this right now, and I know we are. And for me, it's an interesting experience because I often talk a lot about, right, our brains and our nervous systems and how our brains and our bodies are just trying to keep us so safe. And so for me, really doing a lot of nervous system work has shifted that experience because before, there would be a sensing of I can feel something coming. And my brain would be like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And I would panic, right? Because that was my baseline state was like, oh boy, something bad is going to happen. Whereas now it's different. And I can feel this energetic, I almost describe it as like a wall. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like I can feel there's like maybe a veil is a better word, but there's like a really physical sensation of an energy wall that I am walking up towards. And when you think about like if you're walking in, 3D world, you can feel the physical energy of I'm about to walk into something. And oftentimes in our human lives, that's not something we just pass through easily unless we open a door. But it's that physical sensation of it. So for me, I really feel it viscerally. And usually that triggers my brain to be like, oh, something's happening. Before that used to be really fear inducing. Now it's more of an experience of, okay, I can sense this thing. And it always starts out, and maybe we'll start there, as like it starts out as a play between my mind trying to analyze what's happening and intuitively what I sense is happening and what my guides speak to, and then physically what I feel is happening. Because for me, I really try to work with all three. And so physically in my body, it often manifests as physical things in my body, whether that be dis-ease or illness or expansiveness or, something crunchy or something a little out of alignment or something to draw my attention to. And so my initial steps are usually what am I sensing in those three things and trying to balance the three. Because if we get too locked into one over the other, I think we can miss things maybe, or we can get derailed or a little locked in to what we start to anticipate via that one avenue.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Lisa, what are you feeling?
I'm like, yeah, all the things. Yes, I agree. I agree. I think it's a very personal experience. I think that when you talked about the nervous system work, that's a big part of it, because I think in some of the actual physical ways in which we react, or the unconscious ways we might react to an anticipation or that anticipatory kind of energy, can really highly correlate with our human experiences, right? Like, does it elicit fear? Is that fear tied to a trigger, an old memory or something like that, that actually is resurfacing? And then it can resurface physically in our body, and then we can react based upon that memory. You know what I mean? And essentially, that is deeply tied into our nervous system and our nervous system regulation or dysregulation, depending on where we're at. I think also it's important to remember that change can feel really uncomfortable, especially when you don't know exactly how it's going to be. And if you're working alongside with your guides and your guidance team in pulling in a new energy, or where you're kind of anticipating maybe like that spiritual upgrade, and you can feel it coming, whether it's through dream state or whether it's within your relationships, or all of a sudden you have somewhat of a spiritual experience and you're on the verge but can't really explain it. I want you to remember that the majority of people who are experiencing this will lean into more of a fear state from the ego, because your ego will try to keep you safe from this. But remember, your ego is linked to your human self, which means it can actually not ascend outside of the third dimensional frequency. So if your ego is taking front and center, that's in the 3D frequency. That is in place, importantly, to keep your human self safe. So if we're talking about a spiritual experience or spiritual upgrade, your human ego is going to be loud. It's going to say, watch out, because I don't know anything about this, and I'm trying to keep you safe. So just realize that if this is coming up and you're facing a lot of fear and resistance, it's completely normal. That's your ego trying to take care of you. But I was given a really cool analogy about that, is that when you're having a guidance to move forward in something, especially in an energetic frequency that might be beyond the third dimensional, your human frequency, it's like, she said to me, it's like when you have someone that you really love them. But you would never, ever take advice from them. Like, you would never take their advice and actually live on it. But you still are like, you're great. You can sit at the table, but I'm not going to make my decisions based on your advice, right? That's ego. It's like,
I like that.
I
if
love that.
I'm really being chased and I need something in a human aspect, I know you've got a seat at the table, but they're not going to lead you forward in your spiritual evolution, right? They're going to be like, whoa, 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 I don't know about this. Well, of course you don't, right? You're there for the human ego, the 3D part of self. So just know that when you have that kind of pullback, that almost elastic band where you're going forward and then all of a sudden you stop and be like, oh my God, am I crazy? I'm having all these thoughts and I'm self-doubt, self-doubt, self-doubt. That's the ego being like, stay in the 3D. This is where we hang out to stay safe, right? Like,
And what they're saying is that is part of the process of the lead up. It's like the lesson within the journey, right? So it's like, yes, I'm experiencing it. And can I have that awareness? And also, like, that process is part of, because likelihood is the fears, the things that are coming up are probably in one way, shape, or form directly linked to the transformation, the shift that's about to come, but it can feel so like backwards, or like it's almost a little trippy because it's like the thing within the thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, what I find I also have to really do in this same sort of theme with the ego, and one of the ways that I find it presents for me that I've had to work really hard on, and I think I'm getting a lot better, but it can still catch me at times, is feeling the sensation, the understanding, maybe the spirit messages of something coming, and then wanting to know what it is, how it is, when it is, where, all of this stuff, to the point of like needing to figure it out. I need to figure this out. And if I don't figure it out, then whatever, like needing to control all the all the parts of it. And my journey in these anticipatory things has been to surrender into the parts I don't know, hold on to the information I've been given, and just continue moving. And so not becoming like hyper focused on it or obsessive about understanding it. Like I love to understand stuff. I love to research things. If I don't know something, I'll dive into research and I enjoy it. But what happens is my ego will take that and apply it to this more spiritual process, and it doesn't work that way. And so for me, it's a big journey always of like recognizing something's coming and being okay with it, not running into doubt of like, maybe I'm making this up and all of that, right? Because we do that often, but also surrendering and being peaceful in the experience of it. And one thing I've had to do is keep an eye on the energies that then want to come up as like an anxiety or a what if, like it can trigger different anxiety things, and catch that and be like, no, no, the universe has my back. I'm being given everything I can. I have free will in any moment to choose how I want to interact with this. And we go step by step by step, like we're going on a walk, right? And so it's interesting with what you're both bringing up too, like it is so true. We're in a super fast-paced year. It is being super amplified now because now with like April underway, we are flying, right? Like we are at warp speed now. And so these lead ups, both collectively and individually, are happening kind of all over the place. Everybody's feeling it in some way or another, amplified in various timelines in their own lives, different experiences, and the collective one. So the invitation is really like, how can we be in these energies of change consciously? But how can we also be a part of it versus fighting it from, like Lisa, you were saying, that human perspective, the ego of being like, no, let's do this the human way. When yet spirit's like, no, no, let's do this the ascended, awakened, multidimensional way, where your human joins you in the full experience of it, because it doesn't have to be scary.
Going with the flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that they brought through when you were speaking, Jeanette, about that, like riding the wave, right? We talked about riding the wave, going with the flow. That's a part of this, right? And so when you say surrender, to fully surrender, they're saying, I don't know who this is for, but they were really loud. They said to enable yourself to fully surrender, look underneath the surface. You have to release the resistance to fully surrender. Okay, so you can say, I want to surrender. I want to, so why can't I just surrender? They're showing me like underneath that is where the resistance lies. And if there's resistance, there cannot be full surrender. So maybe if you're having a difficult time really surrendering into something, just go under the surface a bit and saying, what am I resisting and why? Why is my ego trying to keep me safe in this situation with these resistance? It's probably an old experience.
Yeah,
Whether
that's a
it's
really
like
good
you
point.
don't want to be viewed as being crazy, or you don't want to be you know, unconsciously pushed out of the group, or because you don't want to be isolated from the community because you don't want to be viewed as other than, right? I believe that we've all gone through that at multiple different times in our lives through this ascension period, right?
I think a lot of people are going through that right now too, of like renegotiating their tribe, right? Or defining their tribe. This came through in a message before too, like, and what is that? What does it look like? And also in defining that and releasing certain bonds, what does that look like, right? Because it doesn't always have to be clear cut, you're out of here, person A, because you don't jive with me, but it can just be an adjustment of expectations. And so there's a lot of like shifting positions. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and you know what? I think our assumption on people's perception of us is often a little bit off in this too, because it comes from that old paradigm, right? That old
Mhm.
ego, and we're all ascending. We really are. So I think people's perception of you is probably a little bit different than you might assume, and that people are starting to open up a bit. And so it's
Mhm.
like starting to get a little more and more and more safe, because I think people are really wanting to reach out and find a tribe that they feel safe in, and they find a community that they can expand in and grow and learn, right? More people are looking for that expansion and that connection to each other and spirit than you might think. So it's time to
Mhm.
start like putting yourself out there a little bit more, and like really, even if it's just talking to your guides and saying, like, guides, can you please help direct me to a community, a spiritual community that I can feel safe and confident in? I'm really looking for that tribe right now. There's more out there than you think,
Mhm.
looking as well, right?
Yeah.
My guides are laughing at me because because I not about community, but I was shown a vision of something in an upcoming experience that I'm to have, and I understand the 3D, where we're going and what we're doing, and can sense that energetic wall coming that I'm to pass through. And we're going to a place with real big spiders, like real big. And I was in meditation the other day, and like Elysian spiders, I understand their beauty and their energy, and also I have a very real boundary of like, don't touch me. Don't come too close to me. I will observe you from afar. And so I was in a meditation the other day, and Spirit showed me this, like, I was in the vision, I was meditating in the vision, and in this place that we're going to, and this like huge spider came on my head and crawled down my back, and I had this visceral like feeling, like, as I was meditating here, not with any spiders. And so they're laughing at me because I was like, does that mean one's going to touch me? Is it going to be? So I'm doing the research piece, Jeanette, that you were talking about. I'm like, are these type? Well, I Googled what type of spider it was, which was not a fun experience, even, having to go through all of
Yeah,
the
no
creepy
kidding.
crawly pictures.
Yes.
Google
Um,
image.
and then and I was like, oh, okay, those ones, I don't think they're there. Okay. And I also know they don't get that big. So, okay. But my fear brain was like, no. So anyways, funny
I
little
think
story
it's
about
more
that.
the spiritual aspect of the
It
spider.
is. It is
Yeah.
for sure. But my brain
I
was
think
like,
it's about the,
we are
yeah, the
not,
spirit guide.
I will,
Yeah,
you
but
can be
then
in my zone, but like,
watch Elise will send us a picture of like some giant spider on her shoulder or
yeah,
something.
I will have thrown myself off of a balcony if that has
Or
happened.
you'll
There
be
will be
passed
no
out
pictures.
on the ground because you just passed out from it, and John will
I've,
send us a picture of it.
That was me
that
and
is
snakes, man.
potentially likely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Big
right.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
John's thing is with snakes. But one thing I wanted to circle back to was, your guys' experience in expectation around these pieces, because I know for me, our cute little brains, I loved your analogy, Lisa, and for me it often the analogy is like our cute sweet little brains, like they're just so precious and they try so hard, but they're just, we don't want them driving the bus where we can. And for me, my brain loves expectation. My brain likes to be like, this is what's going to happen. And it's a control
Mhm.
piece, right? To try and understand and feel safe and create some comfort in what's to come. But that can also come through comparison. It can also come through, our own feelings on self-worth, or what we've seen through other people's experiences, and we overlay that on our own. And I think especially that happens in spiritual awakenings, right? Because it's like, well, this person can see dead people, but I can't do that, right? And I remember, I know I experienced that big time as I was opening up, because it didn't look the same as a lot of other people's. And my brain was like, well, but that's what, the Teresa Caputos do, is they see the dead people walking around. So that doesn't mean you're real intuitive. So for me, expectation can be something that, and again, I feel in this instance, it's not as much, coming up, but we start to try and define what it's going to look like. And I really feel, again, it's from a place of trying to create safety, but it can pull us out of what is, right? When we're so in the brain about, I want it to look like this, and I want to have this incredible experience at this place. And then you go to the place and it doesn't maybe happen in the way that you thought it was going to, or it doesn't feel internally. And I think sometimes when we get so wrapped up in what it's going to look like, we can not miss out on the impact of it, because I think what will be, but we can miss the in the moment experience of how vast it is and how beautiful it is and how it's meant to be. It's unfolding exactly the way it is, even if it doesn't look like you want it to.
Yes. So do you have any like practices or anything that you do to help like your expectations build? Like, do you go into a situation where you know that your expectations are building and then like kind of like walk down the steps and be like, no, what will be will be? I know it's easy to say, but when you do have these expectations walking up to it, it's really tough.
So
it doesn't matter what's going to happen.
It's fine. Meanwhile, internally, you're like, no.
You know, I've sort of come up with like a rule of thumb for me, like just the thing that keeps me in track is, say I know something's coming and say it feels as though it's like 3 weeks away, let's say. Okay. What I'll do once I get the understanding, or if it's a spirit message that something is significant, to appease my brain that really likes to know, like to keep it a part of the team, I will tune in every day and just say, is there anything I need to know at this point? And I'll wait a few minutes. And if I get nothing, I openly receive nothing. I'm like, okay, no big deal. Nothing to know today. And then I'll move on. And then if something comes to me, then I will, journal it or something. But I will give an opportunity every day if I'm able, or every couple days, to just check in, but also set the expectation for myself. If I'm not given any more, I don't need to know anymore, but I'm showing up to be available if there is any more. And then that really helps put my whole being at peace in the lead up to it.
Yeah.
I think for me, I also have to appease my brain. I also have to appease my brain a little bit, and my brain likes evidence. So what I try to do is remind it, hey, remember when you had an expectation about this? And kind of give it that context of maybe this was a time where your expectation overrode things. But then after the fact, you were like, oh my gosh, there was all this other stuff that actually happened that was to be, or look what came from that. So I really try in first instance, especially as I'm moving towards it, and if I can feel that expectation popping up, doing it beforehand and kind of on the road to checking my brain to be like, remember, we might have these ideas. And then throughout the actual, timing of it is, which again, to your point, Lisa, it's hard, it can be hard, and it's a practice, but just remaining as present as possible. So for me, it's being like in my body, noticing what I'm noticing, kind of even what you were saying, Jeanette, about like every day, it's like, what am I feeling? Where am I at? And trusting my intuition to guide me to the places that I need to go. And trying not to, especially if you're going on a trip or something like that, there's plans that you have, right? So your brain might already have like, oh, well, we're going to this place and this is where I'm going to experience this. And just constantly checking in with that and being like, just remain present and allow yourself through that presentedness in your body, in your spirit, in your mind, if possible, to guide you to the next right thing. And that for me is how I've accessed those experiences in a way that are really aligned, and I haven't gotten in the way as much. My brain hasn't. What about you, Lisa?
No, like I agree. All of it.
Yep.
They're just, they're
No,
just saying to remind people that if you did get in your own way, it doesn't negate the shift. I think people, it's like, I'm going to miss out, or which can also feed that desire to control. You won't miss what's meant for you. So trust that even if like maybe cognitively you didn't experience something in the way in which you could have, because your brain had all these expectations and control and whatnot, the energetics of it still remain, and you don't have to worry about like not experiencing it or not having the shift that you were meant to.
But like remain open to it, because sometimes when we get too cognitive and we get too like cerebral about it and have our control come in, we can actually put in self-imposed limitations, that
For sure.
resistance underneath
Mhm.
the surface of fluidity, right? And surrender. And so, yes, it feels good to, like Jeanette, you had told me, like to question and almost to
Yeah.
have like your, like that sovereignty and be like, okay, like I'm going to feel into this, and like guidance system team, please allow me to continue to see some validators along the way so that I feel safe and, like to go
Mhm.
forward. And so that you can trust your intuition with it. Like that's a good one, right? But when you start being like, no, unless it does exactly this at 6 o'clock, I'm going to say no, right? Like these self-imposed limitations can actually really make that receptivity that you're saying, Elise, about receiving the energy that is coming to you, actually a lot more difficult. Like the resistance can make it difficult. It's almost like the resistance comes in and the energetic like income is different here than it would be in that expansive openness. And I know it can be hard to trust, but at the same time, especially when we're talking about a bit of a transformation spiritually and in our life and that upgrade, really allow yourself to remain open. And when that ego does come in, is like, whoa, 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 like back up. You can really say, like, is this my intuition? Is this a guidance thing? Or is this my ego, third dimension frequency, trying to keep me safe? I'm going to open my heart, create love, try to resist fear in this so that I can continue to be open to it, right? And your intuition, your guidance system will be like, whoa, like if somebody says something and you're like, that doesn't resonate, trust that. 100%. Even if it's like a spiritual leader and it's like, no, that info doesn't resonate. Good. Trust that. That's a different intuitive hit than like your expectations kind of like needing the control, and so your ego takes over, right? It's different energy. And you will know the difference when you feel into it, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I also want to add to that in the idea of sometimes too, when we get to the event, we have an expectation of exactly what the event will be like, but it may not be the same. And I want to share a quick story that really like solidified this understanding for me, and I carry it with me now all the time. Is I was once able to participate in a Indigenous sweat, and I knew it would be significant. I knew there would be deep lessons in it. And so we took the ferry over in the morning, and I was like, maybe on the ferry I'll start getting stuff. And there wasn't really much on the ferry. So I was like, okay. And then we get to the event and we're sitting in there, and I was like, okay, here we go. But it was also like I was really cold at first because it was rainy. And then where I was sitting, there was this spider that kept running around me, and I had to make peace with the fact that there was a spider randomly roaming. It seemed to love to be around me. And like
In the sweat,
in
like
the sweat.
in the
Yeah.
tent.
And one of the elders, because when the spider first came running to go under where I was sitting on the ground, I like got up, and this place was packed, right? Like we're like sardined in. So you can't just jump up, but I jumped up. And she was like, oh, we have someone in the group who isn't at one with the grandmother spider. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, I am in spirit, but not in person, not in person. Anyways, it really changed after that. So it wouldn't bother me as much now. Anyways, what I'm getting at though is even in the sweat, as profound as it was, a lot of my mind was experiencing the 3D of it, of the heat and what other people were saying, and observing the sacredness that I was being a part of more in 3D. And then after I was like, well, it was beautiful. And it was a nice meditation, and what a cool experience. But I'm like, I didn't get the thing. It's like I thought I would get things. And so we take the ferry home. I come home and I'm like, I'm going to have a nap. That afternoon in my nap, I had an experience of 4 significant events where I fell asleep, massive spiritual explanations. I would be woken up, I would journal it, and then I would be put right back to sleep again. Same thing 4 times over. And so my significant understandings came after.
After.
Right.
After.
And whether it was because my ego was a little bit in like observing everything, or it was better integrated after. Anyway, like it didn't matter. But like you were saying, Elise, too, it's not going to miss you.
Mhm.
So even if in the moment you're like, meh, there was nothing, it may reveal itself to
Yeah.
when you're more open. So
Yeah.
Mhm. Or
Love
with
the word.
context that you have later on. I remember a number of times in Egypt, I would, have these experiences and I'd be like, okay, cool. And, there'd be pieces of it. And then like months later, I'd be like,
Oh,
holy shit.
yeah.
Like
Yes.
this whole other
Yes.
thing would just kind of wall up me and would create a whole different context to that experience.
Yeah.
But to your point, Lisa, it's like remaining open to that. Like if I had a shut down, or Jeanette, you would have shut down after those experiences and been like, and just kind of, moved on from it. And, oh, that was nothing and nothing happened, right? We then impose those blocks that maybe it wouldn't, or it would have taken a little bit longer, right? The energetics of it is still there, but it can't come to your understandings in the same way or timing until you allow those blocks or
Till
those
it's ready.
self-imposed
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I had a really, like, my deepest, most profound spiritual experience I've ever had to date a little while ago when I was in the US, and I had the experience. And so how they showed it to me was, it was almost like I had the imprint, and then my ability
Yeah.
to like observe it like opened up after a couple days, in which I could actually experience it once I was aligned and where I needed to be aligned. That makes sense.
Totally.
So it's like I
Totally.
had the download and the imprint, and then it like opened up, and so I could experience it days later.
And that'll happen more
Yeah.
often than we think. So
Yes.
yeah, it's,
And
yeah.
then there's saying, remember, when this does happen, oftentimes it can be followed with a bit of a pullback then, right? That kind of elastic band effect, because you kind of have this like, and you're riding this almost high of it. And then all of a sudden you go back home, or you come out of it, or you go, like outside of the group that you experienced it, or whatever the situation might be. And then quite often we'll be like, what was I thinking? Like, what am I doing? Why am I talking about this? I'm done. I might have had that experience.
We all have. I quit. I'm not doing this anymore. That's it.
No, I'm just going to be 3D, right? And then again, it takes a little bit for your ego to not be in the front and center, being like, don't worry, I'll take care of you, right? All this stuff, right? And then and then it gets easier. Like the pendulum swing isn't so great after a while, but really know that these things happen to all of us. So I just feel like, especially for the month of April, these type of experiences are coming around in different capacities for everyone. So like, just know that it goes in waves. It's not just this like opening spiritual experience, bam, got it, done. Now I'm like riding the 5D wave, right? Like it really comes in a lot of different ways, different capacities, integrates with our nervous system, our expectations, our egos, the way we interact with the world, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great point, because we've been talking a lot from the perspective of like going into sacred cultures or sacred places, and yes, those can be the experiences, but it can also be walking through the grocery store.
Yes.
And being like, oh my God, I had this conversation with a person, and it, whatever it is, right? It can be the most beautiful, big, divine, pre-planned things or adventures or experiences. And it can also be in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. Or
Just living.
dreams, right?
Or dreams. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Very cool.
So we send everybody, good luck. And share, don't forget to share some experiences in the comments and stuff, because that does create that more community for everybody to feel safe in their interactions and their upgrades and their, you know what I mean? And so if you're feeling or anticipating a bit of this shift happening, we got you, we know. And yeah, go with the flow, try to open up to it. And I hope that some of this really hit home.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thanks.
How are you feeling, Elise? Are you feeling good?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, it's all good. I still got a ways before, although time is, on times 7 speeds. So it'll be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've all got our own kind of things that are like happening and moving. So I feel like the spring, summer for us is going to be an interesting time of change, and for everyone, right? I know I saw a couple astrology folks talking about how like April is the most like crazy month of the year. Like there is stuff happening. So I feel like for everyone, this is going to look different for everybody, but it's also, there's a lot to come for everyone. Yeah. With that, we wish you a beautiful week. We hope you enjoyed. As Lisa said, leave any comments, questions, experiences below. And we hope you have a beautiful week.